So I'm happy to introduce Kim Conroe. Kim has been a resident of North Texas for over 50 years. She's the past president of the Native Plant Society of Texas, which we know and love as NPSOT. She holds a BS in biology with minors in chemistry and education from the University of North Texas and an MS in science education from Texas Women's University. Kim's taught high school biology and environmental science for 7 years. She's a Texas master naturalist, a member of the Native Prairie Association of Texas, and several other conservation organizations. She's served locally as vice president and president of the North Central Chapter of the Native Plant Society. And on the state level, after serving as the Society's president-elect for 2 years, she became president in October 2019 for a 2-year term. She has been gardening with native plants for over 20 years. I am happy to welcome you, Kim Conroe.
So I am the immediate past president of the Native Plant Society of Texas. My presidency did start just a few months before COVID. So we've all learned how to talk on Zoom, and thank goodness we have all this technology that can get us here. As you can see, our mission is stated here at the top with our founder, Carol Abbott, a photo of him in Bluebonnets. That is our spirit plant for the Native Plant Society of Texas. Our society was founded in 1981 in Denton, Texas. So it did start as a North Central Texas idea, and we have a lot of really big chapters in North Texas. So if you're not a member, you can join one. Today, I will mainly be talking about the utilization of native plants and a little bit about plant habitats. So I want to thank all y'all for coming. Thanks to Jennifer and Jana for inviting me. And I'm pretty sure you're going to have to re-register or register again for next weekend. So that's why register. And screenshots are fine by me. Everyone registered will get a resource page from me. So this is the mission I was assigned and gladly took on from the library of City of Fort Worth Library. And today we'll be going over part 1. So we won't waste any time and we'll go right to it. And next week, of course, talk about the pesky invasive plants, what to do, and the homegrown national park with Doug Talamay's ideas. When you go to the Native Plant Society of Texas website, you will see these ideas as the importance of native plants. So water is really important, to conserve water, and also how to deal with water when we have the overwatery events like we had last May and June. We know that we want to provide pollinator habitat and care for all our wildlife. We know we don't want to spend a lot of money on fertilizers and things like that. Natives are natural to their ecoregion, and they help us maintain biodiversity. So what we'll do now is dig just a tiny bit deeper into the 6 points of what I like to call of native plants. So they're drought tolerant. Lan Shin, a prominent conservationist in Houston, said her mother once asked her, why do you water these native plants after you plant them? They're native. Aren't they going to be fine? And the answer is yes, but plants don't fall in gallon pots. So unless you've grown a plant from seed in the ground, relying on natural water, those previously potted plants are going to need some TLC for about 2 years. And then they should just be fine on annual rainfall. Unless, of course, we have a super drought, which we tend to have every so often. And your guess is as good as mine as to what's going to happen in the future. But people do tend to overwater their native plants. And that is probably the death of many a native plant. So be careful on your watering and listen to your plants. Habitat. Native plants are the foundation of habitats, right? And what is a habitat? It's a home. It's a prairie, a woodland, a marsh. These are places that are unique for the interactive web of life between the flora, the plants, and the fauna, really the animals and really all the living things, microbes, fungi, you name it, that are there. And the number one reason why species go extinct is habitat loss. E.O. Wilson, a great biologist who recently passed, recommends leaving half of the world's habitats intact. So that would be wonderful if we could do that. And as you drive around Fort Worth, you can see we're having an explosion of development. We do live in a prairie, and the prairie happens to be one of the most endangered habitats on the earth. So be sure to write your city leaders, and ask them to help keep our open spaces and maintain some prairie for us. Aesthetics and mental health. So we appreciate beauty in the natural world best when we understand what native plants have evolved in any given habitat. In recent personal experiences, mine, I'm sure yours as well, in the last couple of years, we've learned that being in nature is calming and it makes us feel better. Whether we're gardening or walking or, just looking out the window of our office or room. And scientific studies tell us that being in nature improves your mood. It reduces feelings of stress or anger. It helps you feel more relaxed. It improves your physical health. Gardening, let's do it. And it improves your confidence and self-esteem. And you can be more active. When you care about nature and you get out in it, you are more active. So it's natural. So made by nature, not by man. Right? But native plants help bring that natural world into your world because your garden is nature. Native plants and habitats are all about being natural. Using native plants in your garden can help mitigate the harm done by that humans do to nature. And when you're in your garden, on balance, it's best to emulate what nature does. For example, leave the leaves in the fall, leave the stalks up so that little creatures can live inside those rounded out stems. So be a student of nature and see what nature does, and native plants are your gateway to that. It gives us a sense of place. So what is a sense of place? It's a very special setting. Geographically, we know where we are by looking at plants, right? We know we're in North Central Texas. We're not in West Texas. They have a completely different suite of plants. We're not in East Texas. We're not on the Gulf Coast. We're not in Asia. We're not in Africa. We're not in Europe. We are in the Cross Timbers ecoregion of North Central Texas. So knowing what plants are naturally around you can give you a sense of and what should be there. Where's home? So what and the things that naturally evolve to be in this place are what we'll learn about when you learn about what native plants are best in your ecoregion. Excuse me. So biodiversity is the variety of life in the world. So variety of life in a habitat or variety of life in an ecosystem. And E.O. Wilson actually coined this term, and it is the opposite of monocultures or habitats that have been diminished by invasive plants or urbanization. So when you have biodiversity in a natural ecosystem, all of the moving parts work together in food webs and nutrient recycling. It's a natural system, and they work seasonally and they work year to year to keep things on balance. So the more native plant species that you can put in your yard and manage to put in every nook and cranny, the better you'll be helping nature along. So you can save money, of course, also using native plants, and you can save the planet. So we need to do that. Gardening, of course, is an art, and nature is your palette. So just a little reinforcement here on some of those ideas. Biodiversity. These are all plants that all these pictures were taken in my garden. And I will go over some of these plants today. Actually, I won't, except for one, but I will go over them with two. And but we'll hear three. Now I'm seeing the third one. We will we'll see all these plants through today and next week. Our sense of place. So what is an ecoregion? It's the abiotic and biotic factors that create a unique place. And this is one rendition of an ecoregion. And Texas can even be further divided into sub-ecoregions. We can add a little bit, another one over there in Cumberson County. Over in West Texas, in that brown area, that's the Trans-Pecos. There's actually a little dip of an ecoregion that extends into New Mexico called the Arizona-New Mexico Mountains. So if you've been to Guadalupe Peak, you've been in that ecoregion. We have, if you live in Lubbock, then you're in the High Plains. The Rolling Plains, we need a chapter there if you know anybody. But here we are, we're in this sort of chartreuse color in Tarrant County. So we are smack dab in the cross timbers and prairies. So we have two really unique ecosystems that make up our one big ecoregion. And it gives us a sense of place. Where are we? And Carol Abbott up there is happy that we're studying this habitat. So you create a microhabitat in your home garden when you use native plants. And you can, these pictures here are of a mockingbird and squirrel there enjoying possum haw in my yard. And this was early spring because possum haw is a deciduous plant. So it loses its leaves in the winter. And you can see the little leaves coming out, but it holds on to the berries all winter. And sometime in the spring, a big flock of birds will come through and eat all your berries all up in one day. It's just wonderful if you happen to be there and catch that happening. It's so cool. But if something's not eating your plants, then you're really not part of the ecosystem. So you want to see things eating. You want to see leaf damage by the caterpillars, especially because they're feeding the baby birds. We'll talk more about that here in just a minute. So you want to choose the survival. We're really at a crossroads in time, and I'm so happy that y'all are here. I see that there's 26 people here. So maybe more will see this on the recorded part, but I'm very happy that all y'all are here. And I hope that you are choosing survival of nature over a perfect lawn, because the perfect lawn is not something to really strive for. We want to shrink the lawn, and you want to shrink buying all the stuff. My son used to work at a box store, and they call that the death aisle. So next week, and I'll tell you what you should buy on the death aisle, but it's not much. So they could shrink it to like one little section and it would be okay. But most homeowners tend to overuse things. And we know it's going to rain, and we know that's going to end up in our streams and in our water sources. So what can we do about that? Well, we're going to do something about that. We're going to help ourselves, and we're going to help our community by how we plant in our garden and what kinds of gardens we're going to have. So you can, if you're planting native plants, you are making a pollinator garden. You just can't help it. They're going to come. They're going to come for the nectar. The caterpillars will come to eat the leaves. If you're so inclined, you could add some milkweeds. We have two really good species that grow here in North Central Texas. We have more than two actually that are common to our region, but two that grow good in your garden are the asperula and the viridis, and we'll show pictures of that next weekend. But you can create a pollinator garden. That would be absolutely wonderful. So you see a little bee here on the left. That's on a gosh, Karina, my brain just button bush. I just had a brain thing. Button bush. I see those naturally occurring all over a creek area that I like to walk on. And in the center, we have the hungry little mockingbirds. These were all taken in my garden. And the hungry little mockingbirds, there's one at the bottom. He's like, I'm going to wait to make sure mom's bringing me something. But look, they need to eat insects. They need caterpillars and soft-bodied insects to eat. And their parents will forage for that in your yard. They will, I'm not sure that they go all that far to look for things. So you need to have a big old hackberry or something. Maybe not that, but I love them. I have enough space for one. But you need things in your garden that the caterpillars will eat so that the parents of these baby birds can feed them. Then, of course, over here we have a nice kind of little bumblebee. I haven't identified it, but it's got nectar. It's got pollen packs right there on its back legs. So it's going to take that back and put that in its nest. for food. And you may want to play area. Maybe you like to play croquet or you have children. So for sure, you don't want to put poison on that. And you can shrink the lawn. You don't need a ginormous yard, right, to play volleyball or croquet or whatever you like to do outside. And the newest thing now is to have a real mower. So you want to, like I remember my dad had one of those when I was kid. We lived in Kentucky, and you push that mower. We just had a little lawn. It worked great, and it was great exercise. He stayed fit. So you may want to have a nice little, make a garden where you can socialize with your friends and watch the butterflies. I have a lot of fall blooming nectar plants. I like to invite friends over and to see the monarchs. When I get a lot of monarchs in my yard in the fall, and you can too. And then you can also just have a quiet place out there to contemplate nature or to read a book. You may want to enhance some feature of your home. So you may want to have the line of sight going to your front door as a draw it in with your plants. And you may want to include food in your garden. One year I planted seeds from a butternut squash plant, and it was fabulously successful. But it was the only year I did that. I need to do it again. I was giving away butternut squashes with recipes to workmen that came to my house. So it was a great success. And so there's a new movement even called permaculture that you can get involved in to grow food in amongst your gardens. And the native plants draw in the pollinators so that you have higher yields. So not only do we have drought in Texas, we have too much rain. We had too much rain last May and June, and we really don't know. Like I said earlier, your guess is as good as mine as to what's going to happen in the future. But we know we can have drought. We know we can have too much rain. And a rain garden is one way to help slow the rain down, to gather and pull any kind of pollutants that might be coming off your roof or from your garden, and let it infiltrate into the ground and let those microbes, they can detoxify poison. So gather it, don't let it run into the sewer system. Let's not overwhelm our infrastructure. We're not built for that kind of rain. And doing these kinds of things will help prevent flooding. So the illustration, I'm sorry, it's not that great. This is the one page that there are just a few pages where I took things from the internet and didn't use my own photographs. And this is one of them. So none of these are mine, and there was no attribution. So I'm really sorry about that. But you can see in a public area, they've done almost exactly what you see in this illustration. And then here in the lower left is a residential area. How lovely is that? And it looks like these aren't the only people that are doing it. The neighbors down the street are also catching that rain before it runs off into the street. So they're being good neighbors for themselves and others and trying to prevent flooding and slow down the rain. And then here's a little rain garden that might be in your backyard. Now, how much fun would that be to see butterflies and insects? And you don't have to worry about bees biting you. Those ladies are working hard. They do not want to bother you. And the bumblebees can't even hurt you. So they'll be fun to look at, and don't worry about them at all. They'll be fine. It's the wasps that are a problem. But anyway, take a screenshot of this if you like. I took it myself, and you can go into detail about how it works, but you don't notice that there are lots of things that say if needed, so you don't have to do everything that's on here. You could just maybe do what these people do in their backyard and make a depression that the water goes into. So the idea is to keep the water in your yard. You can do habitat gardening. So what is that? Well, you're trying to emulate a habitat. So we are in the cross timbers and prairies. So that tells you that we're in wooded areas and we have prairie areas. My home was built on the Fort Worth Prairie. So my big yard, front yard, after years of trying to keep it at lawn, I gave up. When we moved here, we've been here for 24 years. I did join the Native Plant Society then, but I was a novice. I know better now and would do things differently, but I quit mowing my yard, quit caring about a lawn in the front years ago. 5, 6, 7 years ago now. And every year it's different. Every year I have a different dominant suite of annuals that come up. And I'm seeing milkweed came up. I didn't even plant it. It just came up. And so grasses are coming in. And of course I am throwing out some seeds now. So I have a prairie. You might have a little pocket prairie in your yard too. You don't have to have a big, expansive front yard to have a prairie. And in your resource page that you're getting, you'll get a link to an app that the Botanical Research Institute of Texas has that shows wonderful prairie plants from the Fort Worth Prairie. It does cost a little money to buy that, but I think it's nominal, like $7. If you're in cross timbers and prairie and you're out west of here, you may want to, of course, these plants aren't what you would use, but you may want to use plants that are even more drought tolerant out there to create that look. Or you can do a woodland if you're up near Denton or even in Arlington. You're in the cross timbers or even up near the nature center in Fort Worth Nature Center. You can have a woodland there, habitat in your yard. I know Sandy Fountain does in hers. She has a beautiful area, or a wetland. So remember that your yard is nature. Healthy Yards, this is from their Facebook page. They want you to share their things. So Healthy Yards on Facebook. And then this lower one is Pollinator Friendly Yards on Facebook. That's Leslie Inman, and she's from Georgia. And she does this wonderful little book, Your Yard is Nature, which I gave that away for Christmas to children of all ages. So here's, I always have to show this one. Are you still dressed like this? Oh, no, we're not. And this is from healthyyards.org. Both of these actually are. So I don't recognize these native plants. They're from the Northeast, but the concept is the same. We want to, and we're trying to get away from the word exotic for non-native plants and use the term non-native. So we're evolving in our terminology and thinking about things. So we want to use native and not non-native. We don't want to blow away and destroy our topsoil. We want to use natural ways of developing the soil, using compost, leaving the leaves, let it naturally become soil. Also, those leaves, if you don't know it, they can have animals wrapped up in them. They're overwintering there, pretending to be, a leaf inside a leaf. So you may not want to mow over and mulch them. Just move them to your flower beds, or leave them in your yard like I do. And then they disappear by June anyway. But the landscape movement in England in the 17th or 18th century, I have to check on that, was a movement that was much bemoaned by future generations, because they did take out a lot of those gorgeous little gardens that they had around manors and big estates and just made it be this lawn. And the idea was, I'm so rich, I don't need to even have a fruit tree around because I can just, buy it. And it's an old concept to have this big lawn. Small lawn, okay, I get that. You might want to do something there, plant it. But the big lawn took off, or the small big lawn took off in the United States after World War II, when we started growing our suburbs. We started getting power mowers. The companies that made chemicals for bombs had to figure out what to do with all that ammonium nitrate. So this is something it's more or less new to us in the last 50, 60 years, and we're finding out it's not that great for the environment. So we can undo that. And we want to, because we want fireflies again, and we want birds. And your yard is a universe. The swallowtail here was in my garden. I watched it emerge, and then I moved it to the rock so it could harden its wings. And I showed this picture to an entomologist once at a talk that it was a monarch class that I took with Karen Harden and Gordon Scruggs. And the National Wildlife Federation put it on at the Fort Worth Gardens. So they had an entomologist there from Dallas. And I was so excited about these pictures. And he looked at me and he said, that swallowtail spent its entire life cycle in your garden. And its offspring will probably do the same. And that's when I thought, oh my goodness, it's their universe. And it is, they're not migrating. They're staying right here in my garden. I have native plants. Like here's the caterpillar here on the lower right for the swallowtail. So I have naturally occurring, the prairie parsley. It's a prairie plant, and the swallow, and also I have toothache trees. I'll have to get the scientific name for y'all for that next week and pictures of it. But so because I have these things, the swallowtail has made their home here. It's so exciting. And then of course, here's those little baby mockingbirds again. When you look at and you see the one bird to all of these other little creatures, that's not even right. You need to put thousands of caterpillars around the bird, because a nest of baby birds until they fledge might eat 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars. So they need to eat soft-bodied insects, and they feed on seeds and insects when they get older. But as babies, look at them. They just want something yummy to eat. Anyway, so we want to consider the right plant, right place. These are all factors that you could spend 4 years studying them in college and becoming a landscape architect. Excuse me. You can spend a day studying them in the NLCP level 2 class. That's a Native Plant Society's landscape class. Or you could spend the next 5 or 10 minutes with me and we'll just briefly talk about this. But you do want to consider these things when you're looking at your garden and you're trying to figure out what plants to put there, because different plants like different things. You'll want to choose the plants that are right for your garden, for your soil. And most of us, if you're in a suburban area, urban area, you're just going to have soil that the developer dug up from somewhere else and dumped it. So, but underlying it, it's probably alkaline soil, because that's what's developed here from those seas that we had millions of years ago. We have alkaline soil, so high pH. And we want to choose plants that are good for these conditions. And lucky for us, the plants are here, and there's a wide variety of them. One thing people really forget is sunlight. You may walk out in spring before your trees leaf out, and you might think, oh yeah, that's a sunny spot. I'm going to get a sunny plant. And then and then when your trees leaf out and it's not. So be really thoughtful about the sun. And something I really think you need to be thoughtful about too is the size of the adult plants. So we want to make sure that we're reading the labels, we're reading the literature, we're finding out what are the size of the adult plants, and we're watching for our underground lines and utilities. So we all want to be safe, and you can always call 811 and get a utility person to come mark your lines. And you may even need to get your internet provider to tell you where your lines are. I know ours are only like 3 inches under the ground. They go all the way around our house. So I have to be careful. If you look over here on the right, that poor oak does not want to be there. It's too close to the building, and it's having to be trimmed funny. And plus, if you can see up, it's going into the wires. So they're going to start cutting that side of it off. Wrong plant, wrong place. Live oak is a lovely tree, but it wants to be rather large. It wants to spread out and put its arms down, and it's not a good choice for a suburban lawn. And don't you put one of these near your house. They're just going to be too big when they grow up. And then, so look, I actually watched, this is a picture from my neighborhood, and I hope people aren't thinking I'm making fun of them or being disrespectful, because we all make mistakes. And they planted trees right under the line. Well, humans were mimics, and we see someone else has done something, and we think that's the right thing, and we want to do it. Just like people put mulch all the way up on their trees. Well, that's a bad idea. Don't do that. You'll hurt the tree. These root flares here, they've done that right. On the lower right here, they're showing their root flares, but the trees are getting into those lines. So, and that's what caused power outages in Collin County this year, trees breaking down power lines. And last year in Snowmageddon, thousands of people were out of power in Central Texas for a long time, and not for any other reason but trees hitting lines. So you want to be careful about that. Now, again, I don't want to seem like I'm being disrespectful here. These people may have planned this way, but it's not a plan that I would do. And if I did it, I would undo it. So we all make mistakes, and that's okay. We go through life. The size of the adult plants and putting plants far away from your house. You don't want plants right up on your house. They will attract insects into it. They can hurt your roof line. They can hurt your gutters. And there's a window behind those bushes. I guess maybe they just should have put a wall there instead of that. So if I were them, I would take this out, but they may like that, so that's okay. And again, you can take our native landscape certification class and figure out why these bushes are not done the right way either. But so consider what view you want. What view are you creating? Because you're the artist in your home. You're going to create what you like. And then the view from the inside out too. You have a window there, you want to look at it. So here we go. You want to do this, and you want to win an award instead of getting a compliance ticket. So it's all about how it's presented. Human beings like edges. We like things to be tidy. So you can win Yard of the Month here, like my friend Lisa did in Wedgwood. And she has a sprawling, busy, not, just a cacophony of plants like what have in nature. This is called wildscaping. She has wildscape, this little area in her yard, and it's absolutely stunning and beautiful, but she keeps her edges tidy. And so that got her this award. So you can, and this is in Fort Worth. So, and then here is a place in Central Texas. You can see that the bushes also do this, where they keep the edge tidy near their house. They don't have a single bush on their house. It's called skirt mowing. You mow a skirt around your house, and then you garden the rest. How wonderful. So right plants, right place. You're going to think about these things, and you may draw your own landscape plan. You may find one in a magazine or a garden center that you like, or you may have a professional do it. But whatever you have, keep in mind that it's moving, it's living. The garden is never the same year to year. It's always changing, and it's an art. So there's always movable parts. Something new and exciting will be happening every year. It's always interesting, and it's the eye of the beholder. Now that I've learned that the winter mess in your yard with the stalks and things like that is home. It's the universe. It's part of that universe for native insects and lizards, toads. So, and then it's going to provide food for the birds in the spring. Then your eye changes and you say, that's beautiful. That's what I want. It's beautiful. So something new to learn. Now I'm going to go through some of my favorite plants that are for a cross timbers and prairie garden. The redbud tree is a small tree, so it's good for a suburban space. It can be 10 to 30 feet tall, depending on how happy it is. It has these lovely pink blooms that are coming out on the stems before it leaves out. So it's this beautiful, bright pop of pink. Excuse me. And you want to be sure, though, in our area that you get, let me just go through this. Scientific names are there for a reason, because common names could be anything. The common name for this is a redbud tree, but I could call it, I don't know, spring pop pink. And that would be my common name. So I might be telling everybody I've got spring pop pink in my yard. And they'd be like, what are you talking about? But if I said Cercis canadensis, variety texensis, when I go to order one, I will get the right plant. So the scientific name, also called the binomial name, is the genus and species. Cercis, the genus, canadensis, the species. And then you can have varieties. So a lot of plants have varieties that have evolved, again, in that microclimate. It's wonderful. There's a Cercis canadensis that is an East Texas redbud. So that's not going to do too well in our rainfall in our soils here in the cross timbers and prairies. So the one you want is the texensis. It's a wonderful plant. And you can see here that little mason bee that probably spent some time in a sunflower stalk or something like that in my yard, was the early awakening. So you want to have 3 seasons of nectar. And another early blooming thing is an eaves necklace. Now this one is, unfortunately, none of these pictures are mine. So I've gotten 2 of them from the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, and the others I just snatched off the internet. So I apologize if they're yours. Please let me know. They need attribution. But the eaves necklace, also called Texas Sephora commonly, and you can see the scientific name, can grow 15 to 30 feet. It can be an understory or an open air plant. It can be a small shrub if the conditions are for that, or a tall tree. And it has these it's a legume, so it's enriching your soil, and has these really pretty cascading pink flowers in the spring. So early spring bloomers are great, especially for our native bees that are waking up. They need something to eat right away. And I do want to tell you that you can see it's very prolific. It produces lots of seeds. And if you have a small garden, plants want to live like everything. So they're going to be making offspring, and they're not hard to control. You can take care of that. And you can see how they can come. You can buy them. Here is a really large one there in that pot there. So any size, or get a seed. The smoke tree, I guess Cotinus obovatus. Would you say that way? You can always just write it down and show it to people. I want this plant. Anyway, this is in my front yard. It's in limestone rock. It's been here for 24 years. I probably should have been better at pruning it through the years. It might have taken on a lovelier shape. So live and learn. It produces these wonderful little panicles here that are red. They start out red. So here's its leaves out, and then you get this wonderful red part with the flowers on the end of those little red stems in the middle there in spring. And then in the fall, it can turn yellow. So it's an all season plant. It's wonderful. And then here it is looking like it's got smoke on it. Is that great? That's just great. Smoke trees are great. They're great for your yard. They can make nice screens, put them there with some understory plants, and you have a nice screen. Lovely. Another nice plant for your garden is a red oak. They freely interbreed, so I'm not going to give you a species here, but it's Quercus is the genus. And I have 2 in my front yard. The leaves are completely different. One is deeply lobed and one is not so deeply lobed. And they are, one hangs on, there's a name for that, I forgot it, hangs on to its leaves all winter, and the other drops them, but they're both red oaks. So I need to get a red oak expert out here to help me identify which is which. But they grow about 50 to 100 feet. They're not going to spread out, though. They're kind of going up. So they'll be good for smaller gardens. But again, do not put them very close to your house. Put them out a little bit. Look up. Make sure they're not under electric wires. Here's another nice cross timbers plant, a Chinkapen Oak. It's one of my, Karina, it's one of your favorites, isn't it? It's Karina's favorite. Anyway, it's a lovely tree, but you can see it can get really large, but it's not going to spread out. It's going to go up. It has pretty fall color. It has interesting leaves, and it feeds a lot of caterpillars. Now here's a bush, spring Herald, elbow bush, so named because a lot of the little stems come out at 90 degrees. I don't have a good picture of that, but it's an early spring bloomer. In fact, if you walk out around in the woods now, you may see some of these starting to bloom in February, late February, early March. And it's a dioecious plant, which is kind of cool, meaning that it has male and female flowers on different bushes. So if you remember your high school biology, the little honeybee there is on a male flower, and those are anthers. So at the end of those little stalks there are anthers, and the bee is collecting pollen. Over on the right, these greenish flowers, those are the female flowers. And so you can see the swollen pistil there. It'll get a lot bigger and make fruit if it gets fertilized. And then there's a stigma on top. So it's dioecious. Here's a picture of it blooming before anything else came out. Isn't that lovely? So, man, that says, welcome, spring. There's another wonderful cross timbers. All these are cross timbers plants. So this is Rice Trilobata. I have a lot of them in my yard. They bloom and berry in the spring. So this is not a fall berry. It's a spring berry. They do have a pretty fall color. I looked and looked. I couldn't find. I know I have pictures of it, but it's pretty in the fall, orangey and yellowy. It's very lovely, and it has 3 parts to its leaves. So it's Trilobata. I couldn't also find a picture in my yard, so I used this one from Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. This is further west, but you can see that they can sprawl. They can be tall and wide, and they can also make thickets. So, but again, that's what nature does. And look at those berries; those are soft berries. While mommy and daddy are feeding the babies caterpillars, they might come over here and nibble on that for their snack. Like, man, I've been working hard. I need some of that Trilobata berry. Here's a small 4 Engelmann daisy. It's all over Texas. It's a wonderful plant. It can be 2 feet high and sprawl out. It has a deep taproot, so it's perennial. It can bloom March through July. If it gets a little hot, a little water will help it bloom. It'll dry up, crispy critter, and you can just cut it back to the ground and it's going to come back because it has that deep taproot. Right now, if you have any of these, you'll see the winter rosettes are out. They start actually in the fall. So on the ground, you have a little rosette of that, and you'll be like, yay, Engelmann daisy's coming. And it's also commonly called a cutleaf daisy. And you can see from the deep cuts in this leaf how it got that common name. Engelmannia persistina. Another prairie favorite is the Mealy blue sage, Salvia Fernacier. All of the salvias in my front yard are gifts of nature. I did not plant a single one of those. They're just wonderful. They're everywhere. When I quit mowing, they pop back up. They must have been I do have a part that I never mowed, so maybe the seeds blew in from there, but or they were hiding in the soil. So this is just a cacophony here of the firewheel behind, and the Engelmann daisy, and then the Mealy blue sage. And there it is going down my walkway in my front garden. So it had just rained, so there's some water on there. It's a lovely, lovely plant, and it's very easy to put Salvia Fernacier in your garden and have it seed out or not. It's easy to control. Another plant from the prairie is the Helianthus Maximus. This is not a spring bloomer, it's a fall bloomer. It can be 3 to 15 feet tall if you water it so. Don't water it. You don't want it to be 15 feet tall. It can stay upright if it gets really big, but it'll probably flop over like these have in the lower left over here. It's important for migratory animals and birds. If you leave the stalks up, they'll feed on the seeds all winter. The flowers are about 3 to 4 inches apart, and they kind of smell like chocolate, to me at least. I don't know. So these are wonderful in your garden, but you do want to not ever water them. Here is the fall blooming aster. This picture with the water reflection is from Bicentennial Park in Crowley. That is it just occurring naturally. It's all over Bicentennial Park in Crowley. It's wonderful. It can grow in part shade, deep shade, and part sun to almost full sun. Not quite, but I've seen lots of butterflies nectaring on this, and it's a wonderful pop of color here in the fall. And then the upper right is from my garden, and then this lower right is from the Tinsley Garden in Fort Worth, where they have the native garden there. My very favorite cross timbers and prairies plant is the Monarda fistulosa, which is wild bergamot or bee balm. And my friend Dawn Hancock gave me this probably 6 years ago, 5 years ago. I can't remember now. Anyway, I have moved it around my yard. I've started brand new beds just for it. I love this plant. It's absolutely stunning. It grows. Depending on where, factors, mine blooms in June. Yours might bloom another time. They can make a colony of plants, so they'll spread out. But this is how they look when they bloom. And then this is how they look in December. So Dawn told me she cuts hers back after they bloom. And I thought, I didn't do that because I was busy or lazy or something. And then this happened. And I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah, no, I'm never cutting that back. So what I do is in the first warm day of March, I'll cut these all to the ground and then put all the little pieces in the compost pile. So just is what's not to like about that. Isn't that gorgeous? And this should be used more. And if you want some, contact me and I will give you some. Well, probably not everybody. Maybe I'll just have to give you some seeds, but for sure, some of y'all, I can give you some starts. Conoclinium gregii, the blue mist flower. No garden is complete without this one. This is the butterfly magnet. It's going to bloom all summer. You might want to it'll start blooming in the spring and bloom all the way to the fall. It's 3-season bloomer. It will attract all kinds of butterflies, not just the monarchs and the American lady or the queen. It's going to attract all kinds, and you're just going to love it. And it will sprawl, it will spread, but it's one of those plants that if you say, no, you don't belong here, I'll go, oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, well, I'll go wherever you want me to be. And it's low growing. Some people call it a ground cover. So it's a wonderful spreader. Coral honeysuckle is a very nice native vine. It can grow 15 to 20 feet. It can take a little bit of wet feet and it needs good air circulation, but it's a hummingbird plant. So when I think about our migratory hummingbirds, and it is the host plant. So yay, if the larva is eating it for the clearwing moth. So what a cool plant to have in your garden. So I'm wrapping this up now. You want to have a lot of native plants. I used to say 70 to 80%, and now I say 80 to 100% native plants. Of course, you might have an heirloom plant like some irises or something from grandma that you want to keep. But anyway, and 3 seasons of nectar. So plants that are flowering 3 seasons, spring, summer, fall. And the host plants, those are plants that the caterpillars eat, bugs eat. And as many different plants as you can get in there. You want to have a lot of biodiversity. Believe me, you can fit a lot of things in a 10 by 10 little space. So everybody that's registered will be getting a PDF, one for part 1 and then one for next week, part 2. So be sure that you self-educate yourself. Oh gosh, I meant to take a new picture. So here's the Sally and Andy Wasowski's book. You must have that in your library. You must have the Michael Eason book. And the other book, oh gosh, Karina, can you bring me Ricky Lennox's book? Gosh, you need Ricky. Oh, it's arranged plants right there on the bottom, right? Range plants. So you'll need that one too. So if you have those 3 books, you can get more books for your garden. But if you have those 3, you're set, because you know what? Very bottom, honey, down the very bottom. She'll get it. She'll get it for me. Here, I'll get it. It's hard to find. Here we go. You need this one too. So Ricky Lennox, what's so interesting about these books is that they're written by Native Plant Society people. Andy and Sally Wasowski. Sally was the president early on in our society. She's just passed away last year. Michael Eason, that wrote this one, was on the state board for 4 years. And Ricky Lennox is our president-elect. So a lot of really smart people in the Native Plant Society. So anyway, look, you never know what you're going to find. You got to figure out whether or not that belongs or not. You could find some interesting insects. You could find, like, really, is a bird of prey feeding is that natural? You got to educate yourself. You can do that by taking NLCP classes, Native Landscape Certification, level 1's required, and then there's 4 other classes you can take in any order. I hope you might consider joining the Native Plant Society today. We have 7 chapters in our region. We have the Trinity Forks is in Denton. Collin County is in Frisco and Plano. There's an East Dallas chapter. That one needs some of y'all to join. The Dallas chapter. North Central is, I think, the 3rd largest chapter in the state with almost 300 people. And we have 7 demonstration gardens, maybe more now. Cross Timbers is in Weatherford, and Prairie Rose in Glen Rose. Those people are so fun. They decorate in the square every Christmas. We love to go down there and help. And thank you. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I don't know, maybe I'll quit sharing now. And Jana can are there any questions on the chat that we need to do? Let me go down to figure out how to stop sharing.
Ma'am.
Oh, good.
I got some questions. All right. So first of all,
I'm trying to stop sharing. I can't. No, that's a new share. Oh my goodness.
Up at the top, there should be an option to a big red button. There you go.
There.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. So please give the name of the last book you held up. I was actually going to ask the same thing.
Okay.
I was furiously scribbling.
Range Plants of North Central Texas. It's a land user's guide to their identification, value, and management by Ricky Lennox. So I will put this on the resource list. I'll put those 3 books on your resource list for today. But oh my gosh, what a wonderful, wow. I'm not kidding. If you just studied those 3 books, you would know it all. Almost.
And I can confirm that the Wasowski Native Texas Plants and the Eason Wildflowers books are both in our collection. So you can get those for free from your Fort Worth Public Library.
There you go. Go to the library.
And
Excellent.
I've made a note about the range plants one. So
excellent. Good.
All right. So there's one question down. Next, when do you plant bluebonnet seeds?
In the fall.
All right.
Now you may want to scarify them. There's all different ideas about that. You can buy them pre-ready to do. So put them out late September, early October, so they can overwinter. They need to, and they can sit there for years before they decide to make a rosette in the fall and then bloom in the spring. So you'll get some. Yep.
That just reminded me. I always, there's a spot near my neighborhood that always has bluebonnets first thing. They're the first ones I spot, and it's usually in February. So I'm going to have to start keeping an eye out over there and see what happens. Yeah.
Keep an eye out.
All right. Can you use gray or black water coming from septic tank sprayers for native plant watering?
Why not? I think it's fine. I mean, if it's spraying out into your yard, I wouldn't drink it, but you could certainly put that on your plants. Yeah.
Great.
And we do. We have a septic system at our house, so we do.
And then this is my personal question, but it's something I've wondered about and never asked. So how do you balance your native gardening with your fruit or vegetable gardening? So if you have fruit trees or vegetable plants, how do you balance that out? Because those aren't generally so native.
No, they're not. And that is kind of an exception. We have to eat. We have to eat, and we have food from all over the world that we eat. Corn, maize, beans, squashes. Those are New World plants, so they're native to our continent, at least, if not Texas. So, frankly, the modern agriculture is the old agriculture now. What we need to do is quit using plants that need sterile soil and constant fertilizer and use natural ways to grow our food. And if you have the native plants in your garden, in and around your garden, they're called food forests now. People are making trees with plants that grow up in them and on them. And, your fruit tree can have a food underneath it. But if you put native plants in and around your food garden, you'll get higher yields because those native plants will be drawing in pollinators to pollinate your food. That's why I had on my butternut squash, oh my goodness, like 30 fruits off one. That's unusual, off one vine.
So you recommend it's okay to kind of mix them in your landscape and not just have them separated?
Yeah, you don't have to separate them. As long as you plant, right plant, right place. If you have a plant that needs air circulation, then you want to kind of give it a little space. But yeah, you can mix them in. Absolutely.
All right.
Be careful though. Don't put chives out in your garden. I made that mistake of doing that and they spread like crazy. So put those in a pot.
Yeah, I made that mistake with mint.
We all make mistakes.
Had a lot of mint. All right, here's another question from the chat. How do you stop native plants from invading your lawn or your lawn from encroaching into your pollinator garden?
Oh gosh. Well, if plants are invading my lawn, first of all, I rejoice because I don't care about lawn. And I'd rather have a lawn of frog fruit and horse herb or whatever else wants to be there than lawn. So that is a non-starter for me. I would hand dig them maybe, but try not to use poisons or just tolerate them. Why do you have a lawn? I don't know. And then in your garden again, it's healthy to get on your hands and knees and pull weeds. So get on your hands and knees and pull weeds. You can do what's called lasagna gardening if you want to create a new bed or keep something out and put layers of cardboard down and heavy mulch it, and that probably will prevent that. And you could just do that on an edge between your flower garden and your lawn and just keep that little part right there like way over mulched with cardboard under it, and that'll probably help.
All right, any other questions? Please put them in the chat and we can please comment on dandelions.
Oh, well, they're non-native, but they're ubiquitous. So they have naturalized. You can't stop them. They're actually now, an early food source for early emergent insects. So, and you can eat the leaves. They're nutritious. They eat them in Europe all the time. You just wash them. You don't eat anything unless you ask your doctor, I guess. I don't want to get sued here, but other people have been eating dandelions forever. So you can eat them and the bees can eat them. So I think they're pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say with henbit. Henbit is a non-native plant, but I've seen swallowtails on henbit. And that's something that it's here. We are not getting rid of it. Just live with it and love it. Change your thinking.
I have a kind of funny, I love henbit. It's such a funny looking little thing.
Yeah.
And
you might have, and those plants are just like the native plants. One year you may have a whole bunch of henbit and none the next year. Who knows? Same with, nature's interesting.
Mm-hmm. See, I don't see any other comments. I have another question. So what if you do have one of those more woodland lawns, like you were showing, it would be more Arlington, more shady mm-hmm. and tree covered, where all you have is St. Augustine. What can you do in the shadier lawns?
Okay, so horse herb is a really good native ground cover that can be in there. It has little yellow flowers. It's lovely. You can mow it. Lyre leaf sage, golden groundsel. You can put in violets. They'll come and go through the season, and you want that. People go and they buy pansies. Why are we doing this? Because I want color. Well, you can do some things with native plants and have color flushing, and it comes and goes. You don't have to keep buying it. Or you might want to put pansies in pot. I don't know if you want to do that, but and so also those are all the plants I listed. Don't buy pansies. All the plants I listed are short plants. Tall plants, you can do coralberry. You can do frostweed. That's a really tall plant. And people go, oh my gosh, you plant one frostweed. It's a biennial. But you'll say you plant one, you'll have a million. Well, yes, you will. But you can also go out there very easy when they go to seed and clip the seed heads. And then you're not going to have them going everywhere because they're going to come back by seed.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if we have any last minute questions, please put them in the chat. Otherwise, I think we have answered everything.
That was Lisa. Lisa asked that. Hi, Lisa. She asked, how do you stop them from invading your lawn? Yeah, Lisa, just let them invade. She's the one that won the award. She's my award-winning friend.
Oh.
What
Okay.
evergreen shrubs? Oh, yeah, I want to answer that one. I see that one.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think evergreen sumac. So rice virens. Gosh, that's a one, and it's big though. And you could make a hedge out of it. I guess you could keep it small if you wanted to. Also, wax myrtle is evergreen, so that would be nice. Those two are off the top of my head, pretty good.
I have a lovely wax myrtle we've grown to block a neighbor's porch light from shining into our house. It's been very effective for that, and critters seem to love it. So
yeah, good for, and they smell so great. You can clip them off, bring them in the house, rub them a little bit.
Oh. What was the shade plant you listed after horseherb?
I think, did I say lyre-leaf sage?
I think there was one in between.
Lyre-leaf sage, horseherb. I didn't say white avens, but white avens is another one that could be good for there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, we'll have to look on the recording.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, that's a good reminder. This will be on the library's YouTube shortly, so you'll get an email. I'll make sure to send out an email to you guys with a link to the recording, because there's a lot of information here. And also Kim's guide that she's going to send out, and I'll also send you links to check out those books she mentioned that the library has. So
Jana, thank you so much. It's so much fun, and I'm excited about next week.
Yes.
And,
next week will be fun.
Yes,
So
hopefully get to talk about killing native, invasive, non-natives.
Well, and who doesn't love that?
Right.
All right. Thank you, everyone. As always, feel free to reach out if you have any questions, comments, etc. And then Kim will be back with us next week. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Jenna. Thanks, everybody. Hope you learned something new.